The wedding dress hung in the boutique window like a ghost draped in silk and lace, and Seraphina Blackwell pressed her trembling fingers against the cold glass as her world shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Through the reflection, she could see them inside, her fiancé Marcus Donovan laughing with radiant joy as he helped another woman try on the exact same dress Seraphina had chosen for their wedding 3 months ago, the same dress that had been hanging in her closet the night her twin sister Evangeline had supposedly drowned in Moonlight Lake. But the woman Marcus was embracing with such tender devotion, the woman wearing Seraphina's dream wedding dress, wasn't a stranger at all. It was Evangeline herself, very much alive, her distinctive emerald eyes sparkling with triumph as she caught Seraphina's horrified gaze through the window and smiled with the cold satisfaction of someone who had executed the perfect crime. For 18 months, Seraphina had grieved for her twin sister, the other half of her soul who had vanished without a trace during what was supposed to be a peaceful evening walk around the lake they'd loved since childhood. The police had found Evangeline's torn dress floating among the reeds, her favorite pearl earrings scattered on the muddy shore, and drops of blood on the rocks that suggested a terrible accident or something far more sinister. Seraphina had spent countless nights walking those same paths, screaming Evangeline's name into the darkness, diving into the black water until her lungs burned and her limbs went numb, desperate to find some trace of the sister who had been her constant companion since they'd shared their mother's womb. She had organized search parties, hired private investigators, and offered a $50,000 reward for any information about Evangeline's disappearance, never suspecting that the person she was searching for was watching her suffer from the shadows, delighting in every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of anguish. Now, as Seraphina stood frozen on the sidewalk watching her dead sister plan a wedding to the man who had once promised to love Seraphina forever, the memories came flooding back with devastating clarity. She remembered how Evangeline had always been jealous of everything Seraphina possessed, how she'd stolen Seraphina's friends in high school by spreading vicious lies about her character, how she'd sabotaged Seraphina's college applications and then comforted her when the rejection letters arrived. She remembered the way Evangeline's eyes had hardened with envy when Marcus had chosen Seraphina over her at their 25th birthday party, how her twin had smiled sweetly while saying, "I just want you to be happy, Sarah, even though we both know I met him first." Most painfully, she remembered the last conversation they'd had before Evangeline's disappearance, when her sister had hugged her goodnight and whispered, "You have everything I've ever wanted, and it's not fair. Sometimes I think the world would be better if there was only one of us." Inside the boutique, Marcus was spinning Evangeline around in a circle, both of them laughing with the intoxicated joy of lovers who believed they'd gotten away with the perfect deception. Evangeline had cut her hair shorter and dyed it a deeper shade of auburn, but Seraphina could see the small scar above her left eyebrow from when they'd fallen off their bikes as children, the distinctive freckled constellation on her neck that their mother had called "angel kisses," and the way she tilted her head to the right when she laughed. Details that proved beyond any doubt that the woman Marcus was holding was the sister everyone believed was dead. Seraphina watched as Marcus knelt down on one knee and presented Evangeline with a ring box, the same vintage sapphire ring that had belonged to his grandmother, the same ring he'd given to Seraphina exactly 2 years ago when he proposed during a sunset picnic by the very lake where Evangeline had supposedly met her end. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could have, and Seraphina felt her knees buckle as the full scope of her sister's deception became clear. Evangeline hadn't just faked her own death, she'd orchestrated an elaborate scheme to steal Seraphina's entire life, piece by precious piece. She'd studied Seraphina's mannerisms, her speech patterns, her most intimate secrets and dreams, then used that knowledge to seduce Marcus during his vulnerable period of grief. She'd probably been the one sending those anonymous condolence cards that had brought Marcus and Seraphina closer together in the months after the disappearance, creating opportunities for herself to accidentally encounter him at coffee shops and bookstores while wearing Seraphina's favorite perfume and quoting Seraphina's favorite poems. Every moment of comfort Marcus thought he'd found with a new love had actually been a carefully orchestrated manipulation by the woman who had destroyed his first love's life. Seraphina stumbled backward into the alley behind the boutique, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called the only person she could trust, her cousin Detective Isabella Thorne, who had been investigating Evangeline's disappearance since the beginning and had never quite believed the official narrative. "Bella, Serafina whispered into the phone, her voice barely audible above the sound of traffic and her own ragged breathing. I found her. I found Evangeline. She's alive, she's been alive this whole time, and she's, oh God, Bella, she's marrying Marcus. She's wearing my wedding dress and she's marrying my fiancé, and everyone thinks she's dead, but she's been here, watching me fall apart, watching me grieve for her while she stole everything I loved. Isabella's sharp intake of breath crackled through the phone like electricity. Sarah, where are you? Don't do anything, don't confront them, just tell me where you are and I'll be there in 10 minutes. If what you're saying is true, then Evangeline has committed fraud, identity theft, and about a dozen other felonies. But we need to be smart about this. We need evidence, we need witnesses, and we need to make sure she can't disappear again. Serafina gave her location and then slumped against the brick wall, feeling as though her entire reality had been revealed as an elaborate lie. She thought about all the nights she'd cried herself to sleep missing her twin, all the therapy sessions where she'd blamed herself for not being able to save Evangeline, all the times Marcus had held her while she sobbed and whispered that he couldn't possibly understand the pain of losing half of your soul. 20 minutes later, Isabella arrived with 2 other detectives and a warrant that she'd somehow managed to obtain with remarkable speed. We've been monitoring unusual activity on Evangeline's social security number for months, Isabella explained as they positioned themselves outside the boutique. Someone's been using her identity to open bank accounts, rent apartments, even get a driver's license. We suspected identity theft, but we never imagined it was Evangeline herself. The plan was simple but effective. Isabella would enter the boutique as a customer while wearing a hidden camera, engage Evangeline in conversation that would force her to reveal details only the real Evangeline would know, and then signal the other officers to move in for the arrest. Serafina watched through the window as Isabella approached the happy couple, pretending to admire wedding dresses while secretly recording everything. "That's such a beautiful ring," Isabella commented casually, pointing to the sapphire on Evangeline's finger. "It looks like a family heirloom." Evangeline beamed with pride, completely unaware that she was sealing her own fate. "It belonged to Marcus's grandmother," she said, her voice carrying the exact same inflection Serafina had always used when she was particularly proud of something. "He told me he'd been saving it for the woman he wanted to spend forever with. I'm so lucky he chose me after everything he's been through with his previous fiancé. Poor girl lost her twin sister in a tragic accident, and the grief just consumed her. Marcus tried to help her heal, but eventually, he realized he needed to find someone who could love him without being haunted by death." The lies flowed from Evangeline's lips like poison disguised as honey, and Serafina felt a rage so pure and consuming that it threatened to burn her alive from the inside out. Her sister wasn't just stealing her life, she was rewriting their history to make herself the hero and Serafina the tragic victim who had been too broken to deserve love. Marcus nodded along with the fabricated narrative, his eyes soft with what he believed was compassion for his previous fiancé's mental health struggles. "Serafina was so lost after Evangeline died," he said, his voice heavy with manufactured sadness. "I tried to help her, but she became obsessed with conspiracy theories about her sister being alive. She started accusing innocent people of hiding Evangeline, following strangers who looked even remotely similar to her twin. It was heartbreaking to watch someone I cared about lose their grip on reality like that." Isabella caught Serafina's eye through the window and nodded slightly. They had enough evidence to make the arrest. But before she could signal the other officers, Evangeline suddenly froze, her gaze locking onto something behind Isabella's shoulder. She had spotted Serafina standing outside, and the mask of loving innocence slipped from her face like water running off stone. For the first time in 18 months, Serafina saw her twin's true face, the face of someone who had planned and executed the destruction of her own sister's life with methodical precision and had enjoyed every moment of the process. Well, Evangeline said, her voice dropping to the cold, calculating tone that Serafina remembered from their childhood arguments. "If it isn't my dear departed sister, risen from the grave of her own self-pity." Marcus spun around in confusion, his face cycling through shock, recognition, and dawning horror as he realized he was looking at the woman he'd abandoned for dead. "Serafina. But, how, why are you? His voice trailed off as the impossible truth began to penetrate his consciousness. The woman he'd been mourning as dead was standing alive and devastated outside the window, while the woman he'd fallen in love with during his grief was revealed to be the supposedly dead twin sister. Evangeline laughed with genuine amusement, as if the whole situation was an elaborate joke that had finally reached its punchline. "Oh, Marcus, darling, you look so confused. Let me clear things up for you. You see, I never died in that lake. I simply got tired of watching my inferior half steal everything that should have belonged to me. So I decided to take what was rightfully mine by eliminating the competition." She turned to face the window where Serafina stood, her emerald eyes blazing with a hatred so intense it seemed to burn the air between them. "Did you really think you deserved him more than I did, Sarah? You, with your constant need for validation, your pathetic insecurities, your mediocre talents. I was always the stronger one, the smarter one, the more beautiful one. The only reason you had anything good in your life was because I allowed you to have it, and I simply decided to stop being so generous." Marcus stumbled backward, his face white with shock and revulsion. "Evangeline, what are you saying? Serafina is your sister, your twin. You loved her. You mourned when you disappeared. I held you while you cried about how much you missed her." But Evangeline's smile only grew wider and more predatory. "I cried because I was happy, you beautiful fool. Every tear was a celebration of my freedom from her shadow. Do you have any idea what it's like to share a face with someone who gets all the love, all the attention, all the opportunities? People always said we were identical, but they were wrong. I was always better, but somehow she was always chosen. Well, not anymore." Isabella had heard enough and signaled for the arrest, but Evangeline wasn't finished revealing the depths of her deception. As the officers moved toward the boutique entrance, she continued her confession with the gleeful malice of someone who had been waiting 18 months to reveal her masterpiece. "The blood on the rocks by the lake. My own blood, carefully collected over several weeks and stored until I needed it for the scene. The torn dress. A duplicate I bought months before my disappearance and strategically damaged for maximum dramatic effect. The pearl earrings. Cheap replicas I scattered around the shore to make sure they'd be found. Every detail was planned, every piece of evidence was manufactured, and every person who grieved for me was dancing to my choreography." Marcus looked as though he might vomit, his hands shaking as the full scope of Evangeline's manipulation became clear. "The woman I fell in love with doesn't exist," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "Every moment we shared, every conversation, every kiss, it was all based on lies. You studied Serafina, didn't you? You became her to seduce me. You used her own personality against her to steal her life." Evangeline clapped her hands together in mock applause. "Finally, he understands. Yes, Marcus, I studied her like a scientist studies a specimen. I learned her dreams, her fears, her little habits and preferences. I became a better version of her, one without the annoying moral compass and emotional baggage. And you fell for it completely, didn't you? You loved me more than you ever loved her, even though I was just playing a character based on her personality." The boutique door burst open as the officers rushed in, but Evangeline made no attempt to flee. Instead, she stood perfectly still, radiating the calm satisfaction of someone who had accomplished exactly what she'd set out to do. "You can arrest me," she said as they approached with handcuffs, "but you can't undo what I've done. Serafina will never trust anyone again, never love anyone again, never feel safe in her own skin again. Every time she looks in a mirror, she'll see my face and remember that the person she trusted most in the world was capable of destroying her without a moment's hesitation. That's a victory no prison sentence can take away from me." As the handcuffs clicked around Evangeline's wrists, Serafina finally entered the boutique, her legs unsteady but her voice clear and strong. "You're wrong, Evangeline," she said, looking directly into her twin's eyes without flinching. "You didn't destroy me. You revealed your own character, not mine. You showed everyone exactly who you really are, someone so consumed by jealousy and hatred that you were willing to fake your own death and torture the people who loved you. But I'm still here, still standing, still capable of love and trust and all the things you tried to take from me. Evangeline's confident smirk faltered for the first time, replaced by a flicker of something that might have been uncertainty. You think you're so strong, so noble, so forgiving. But deep down, you know the truth. I won. I took your fiancé, I made you suffer for 18 months, and I proved that even the person closest to you could betray you without hesitation. You'll never be the same person you were before I did this to you. But Serafina stepped closer, her voice growing stronger with each word. You're absolutely right. I'll never be the same person I was before. I'll be stronger, wiser, more careful with my trust, but also more grateful for the people who prove themselves worthy of it. You taught me that not everyone who shares my blood shares my values, and that's a valuable lesson even though it came at a terrible price. Marcus approached Serafina with hesitant steps, his face a map of shame and confusion. Sarah, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to apologize for something like this. I thought you were. I believed she was. I fell in love with a lie, but the lie was based on you, and that feels like another betrayal even though I didn't know. Serafina looked at the man who had once promised to love her forever, and felt a complex mixture of pity, anger, and something that might eventually become forgiveness. Marcus, you were grieving and vulnerable, and she took advantage of that. She knew exactly what to say, how to act, what buttons to push because she'd been studying me our entire lives. You're a victim in this too, even though your betrayal hurt me in ways I'm still trying to understand. As the officers led Evangeline away, she turned back for one final shot at her sister. This isn't over, Sarah. Even from prison, even from the depths of hell, I'll find ways to make you suffer. You can't escape the fact that we share the same face, the same DNA, the same origins. Every time someone looks at you, they'll wonder if you're capable of the same cruelty I am. You'll never be free of me because I'm literally part of you. But Serafina surprised everyone, including herself, by laughing, not with bitterness or anger, but with genuine amusement. That's where you're wrong, Evangeline. We may share DNA, but we don't share character. We may have the same face, but we've chosen to wear it differently. And everyone who meets us will be able to tell the difference within minutes because goodness and evil leave their marks on people in ways that go much deeper than genetics. In the days that followed Evangeline's arrest, the true scope of her deception began to emerge through the police investigation. She had been living under multiple false identities for the past 18 months, using stolen credit cards and forged documents to create elaborate backstories for herself. She had a storage unit filled with journals where she'd meticulously planned Serafina's destruction, complete with timelines, psychological profiles, and detailed strategies for isolating her from friends and family. Most disturbing of all, she had been secretly filming Serafina during her most vulnerable moments, her breakdown at Evangeline's fake funeral, her desperate late-night searches around the lake, her tearful therapy sessions that Evangeline had somehow managed to record from outside the building. The evidence painted a picture of someone who had spent years nurturing a hatred so deep and irrational that it had consumed her entirely. Evangeline's journals revealed that she had never truly loved anyone, not even their parents, but had simply played roles designed to get her what she wanted. She had faked affection, manufactured emotions, and manipulated situations with the calculating precision of a sociopath who viewed other people as objects to be used rather than human beings to be loved. The sister Serafina had mourned had never actually existed, she had been grieving for a carefully constructed persona that Evangeline had worn like a mask their entire lives. Marcus struggled to process his own role in the deception, racked with guilt over how easily he'd been manipulated and how thoroughly he'd betrayed Serafina without realizing it. I keep trying to figure out when I should have known, he told Serafina during one of their painful but necessary conversations. There were little moments when something felt off, when she said something that didn't quite sound like you, but I convinced myself I was imagining things. I thought grief was making me paranoid. I thought I was dishonoring your memory by comparing every woman I met to you. Serafina found herself in the unexpected position of comforting the man who had abandoned her, helping him understand that Evangeline's manipulation had been so skillful that even professionals might have been fooled. She had 25 years to study me, Serafina explained during one of their meetings at a neutral coffee shop. She knew my favorite books, my childhood fears, the way I laugh when I'm nervous, the stories I tell when I'm trying to connect with someone new. She could become me better than I could become me because she was observing from the outside while I was just living my life from the inside. But as the initial shock began to wear off, Serafina discovered something unexpected happening within herself. Instead of being destroyed by her sister's betrayal, she was finding a strength she'd never known she possessed. The worst thing she could have imagined had already happened. The person she trusted most had proven capable of unthinkable cruelty, and she had survived it. More than survived it, she was beginning to thrive in ways that surprised everyone who knew her, including herself. She started volunteering at a center for victims of family abuse, sharing her story with others who had been betrayed by people they trusted completely. She discovered that her experience, as painful as it was, had given her unique insights into the psychology of manipulation and the process of healing from betrayal. The hardest part, she would tell other victims, isn't forgiving the person who hurt you. It's forgiving yourself for trusting them in the first place. But trust isn't a weakness, it's a strength that can be damaged but never truly destroyed if you're willing to rebuild it carefully and wisely. 6 months after Evangeline's arrest, Serafina made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her. She decided to visit her sister in prison, not to seek closure or forgiveness, but to confront the person who had shaped her life in ways both terrible and transformative. The meeting took place in a sterile visiting room where Evangeline sat behind reinforced glass wearing an orange jumpsuit that somehow made her look smaller and more ordinary than Serafina remembered. "I wondered when you'd come," Evangeline said, her voice carrying none of its former venom but also none of the false warmth she'd once used to manipulate people. "I figured you'd want to gloat about how I ended up in here while you're out there playing the brave survivor." But Serafina surprised her by shaking her head. "I didn't come here to gloat, Evangeline. I came to thank you." The words seemed to hit Evangeline like a physical blow, and for the first time since childhood, Serafina saw genuine confusion in her sister's eyes rather than calculated malice. "Thank me?" Evangeline repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "For what? For destroying your life? For stealing your fiancé? For making you question everything you thought you knew about love and family and trust?" Serafina leaned forward, her voice calm and steady. "For showing me who I really am underneath all the doubt and insecurity you spent years fostering in me. For proving that I'm stronger than either of us ever imagined. For teaching me the difference between people who love you and people who just want to possess what you have." Evangeline stared at her sister with the hollow eyes of someone who had finally run out of weapons to wield. "You're insane if you think this made you stronger. I broke you, Sarah. I shattered everything you believed about yourself and the world around you. You'll never trust anyone completely again, you'll never love anyone without holding something back, and you'll never look in a mirror without seeing my face staring back at you." But Serafina smiled with a serenity that seemed to fill the entire visiting room. "You're right that I'll never be exactly the same person I was before. But the person I am now is someone I like much better. I'm not naive anymore, but I'm not cynical either. I'm careful with my trust, but I haven't stopped trusting. I'm protective of my heart, but I haven't closed it off to love. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see your face, I see mine, shaped by experiences that taught me what I'm truly made of." Evangeline's composure finally cracked, and tears began streaming down her face with the force of 18 months of suppressed emotion. "I hate you," she whispered, but the words carried no power, no venom, just the exhausted sadness of someone who had spent so much energy on hatred that there was nothing left inside. "I hate that you survived this. I hate that you're stronger than me. I hate that even now, even after everything I did to you, you're the better person." Serafina reached toward the glass that separated them, not quite touching it but close enough to bridge the space between them with intention if not contact. "I don't hate you, Evangeline. I pity you. I pity the little girl who grew up so consumed with jealousy that she never learned how to be happy with her own life. I pity the woman who was so afraid of being ordinary that she chose to be evil instead. And I pity the person sitting across from me now who realizes too late that the only thing she ever really destroyed was herself. As Serafina stood to leave, Evangeline called out to her with desperate urgency. "Sarah, wait. I need you to know something. When we were children, before all the jealousy and competition and hatred, there were moments when I really did love you. There were nights when I'd watch you sleeping in the bed next to mine and feel grateful that I wasn't alone in the world, that someone understood what it was like to be me because they shared my DNA and my experiences. I buried that love under years of resentment, but it was real, and losing it was the first step toward becoming the monster who hurt you." Serafina paused at the door, her hand on the handle, considering her sister's words carefully. "I believe you, Evangeline. And maybe someday, when you've done the hard work of understanding why you made the choices you made, we can find our way back to some version of love. Not the toxic, competitive love we grew up with, but something healthier and more honest. But that work has to start with you, and it has to be genuine, not just another manipulation designed to make me feel sorry for you." A year later, Serafina stood in her own wedding dress, not the one Evangeline had tried to steal, but a new one that represented new beginnings and hard-won wisdom, preparing to marry Dr. James Morrison, a kind and patient man who had helped her heal not by trying to erase her past but by helping her integrate it into a stronger, more complete version of herself. Marcus had moved across the country, unable to live with the guilt of his inadvertent betrayal, but he'd sent a letter of blessing that Serafina treasured for its honesty and genuine remorse. As she looked in the mirror, adjusting her veil with steady hands, Serafina thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had been broken, betrayed, abandoned, and manipulated by the person she trusted most in the world, but she had emerged from that darkness with a deeper understanding of her own strength and a clearer vision of what true love looked like. The woman staring back at her from the mirror wasn't unmarked by her experiences, but she wore her scars like badges of honor, proof that she had faced the worst and chosen to transform it into something beautiful. James appeared in the doorway, his eyes bright with love and admiration for the woman who had trusted him with her carefully guarded heart. "Are you ready to start our new adventure?" he asked, offering his arm with a smile that had helped her remember what genuine affection looked like after years of manufactured emotions. Serafina took his arm and felt the last piece of her healing click into place. "I've been ready my whole life," she said, and meant every word. "I just needed to learn the difference between settling for what I thought I deserved and fighting for what I actually deserve." As they walked toward their future together, Serafina realized that Evangeline had been both wrong and right about one thing: she would never be the same person she'd been before her sister's betrayal. But the person she'd become was someone who understood that love wasn't about perfection or even blood relations, but about choosing every day to build something beautiful with someone who chose to build it with you. She had learned that trust wasn't about blind faith but about careful observation and mutual respect. And most importantly, she had discovered that the greatest revenge against someone who tries to destroy you isn't becoming like them, it's becoming so completely yourself that their attempts to define you become irrelevant. The sister who had tried to steal her life had inadvertently given her something far more valuable, the knowledge that she was strong enough to survive anything, wise enough to learn from betrayal without becoming bitter, and brave enough to love again even after her heart had been shattered by the person who was supposed to protect it most. And in that knowledge, Serafina found not just healing, but a kind of victory that no one could ever take away from her, because it lived not in her circumstances but in the unbreakable core of who she had chosen to become.